The Oklahoma Sooners are looking for a new defensive coordinator.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Zac Alley is leaving for West Virginia, and that shouldn't be a surprise because there were rumblings that might be the case for a couple weeks after the regular season ended. We kind of dismissed those rumblings thinking, hey, there's no way he's going to leave Oklahoma, leave his guy Brent Venables. Well, it turns out maybe Rich Rod is more his guy, or the idea of being able to be the guy running the defense was enough to pull him away.
Yeah, that's what it feels like more and more, that he wanted to be the independent decision maker when it comes to what happens on the defense side of the ball. Because when he was at Jacksonville State, one thing that Alley ran a lot more was like a 3-3-5 setup with three safeties. So three high safeties. And it's something that we were kind of hoping to see a little bit of. And there was a mixture of it. You saw some 4 and you saw some 3-3. But the one struggle you get when it comes to recruiting defensive linemen, if you're running a 3-3-5 setup, a lot of D linemen don't want to go in there because that means that you're really only eating up blocks and they want an opportunity to truly attack. And that's kind of what you've seen with Venables, that it's been molded to where it's a combination of 4 and 3 down. It just depends on the scenario, and you want to mix it up to kind of confuse the defense. So that's when your exotic blitzes and stuff come in. And to be honest, when I went back and looked at some of this, our blitz rate wasn't as high as I was hoping it was going to be this season. I mean, we did some stuff, but we didn't do as much damage. So, John, I think that point is good, that he probably felt that he needs to go and run his 3-3-5. And to be honest, I think that'll be very successful in the Big 12.
Well, it's a Big 12 defense. It
really is. Actually is, yeah.
I mean, you see John Hickok up at Iowa State running it. He's been running it successfully for a really long time, and they want to get a little bit more spread out. Listen, I get it. There's a lot of reasons why a guy might want to move on from Oklahoma to West Virginia. I see the point that a lot of people are making out there, that after 2024, with Brent Venables in the hot seat being pretty in fuego going into 2025, the job security situation might cause a guy to want to find some greener pastures. At the same time, if you're a good defensive coordinator and Oklahoma's defense is going to be really good again in 2025, even if Oklahoma goes 6-6 and everybody gets fired, the defense is going to have a good season, and you're still going to be a hot defensive coordinator name. You'll still find a big job. But listen, the relationships thing, that's going to always matter. You saw it with Phil Loadholt going from Colorado to Mississippi State over the weekend as well. He's reuniting with Jeff Lebby, a guy that he's been on staff with at several stops now. Those relationships matter. And if Zac Alley just wanted to go be the guy, Rich Rod provided him a really good opportunity to do that, because he's not going to meddle. He's not going to collaborate or be as involved in what the defense is doing as Brent Venables did. And listen, I understand wanting to have a solo coordinator title as well. You want to be the guy. I totally get that. Oklahoma, they have 3 co-defensive coordinators, and that's a little bit muddled in my opinion. But you did that. You offered those titles in order to retain Todd Bates, Jay Valai, guys who were getting overtures from other big-time programs across the country. So in order to do that, you give them a title bump, you give them a pay bump, and you keep them around for a little bit longer. So it is what it is. Zac Alley is now at West Virginia after having what I thought was a solid, I'll say a good year for Oklahoma's defense. Obviously, they improved in many ways as a defense. Now, would they have improved anyway, whether Zac Alley was the DC or Brent Venables was the DC or Jay Valai or Todd Bates? We'll never know, but things were heading in a very positive direction before they hired Zac Alley, because of all the things you had coming back on defense, the way you recruited defense, the way you're developing your defense. But Zac Alley was certainly highly spoken of by the players, by the coaching staff. Everybody was very impressed with what he brought to the table. It's just a shame you only got 1 year out of Zac Alley.
Yeah, that's the thing that only sucks is you only got one of the 3 years that you got. And you was hoping that he'd be around for a while. And truth be told, it sounded like he was saying that he was going to be around for a while. And
Yeah, on Friday.
yeah, unfortunately, but he was looking forward to next season and talked about the players coming back because we're bringing back a ton. I mean, we're losing Woody, Danny, and Billy out of your linebacker secondary, and then you got Dejon Terry is really the only one that's officially gone, but and Ethan Downs and Caden Woolard. So and Trace Ford. So you got about 6 players that are going to be gone, but you have a lot of dudes that have been rotating in often that'll be back. So you're missing out on that, and it kind of sucks, right? It sucks that you didn't get to see the Zac Alley portion of it going forward. But there's also kind of a thing that I was looking at, like as you mentioned, John, the statistics have shown that the team has gotten better. Like I went through and I pulled the 2023 numbers and looked at the 2024 numbers, and yes, Oklahoma got better year over year in everything. In 2023, the total defense was, I had it pulled up and I just pulled it off a second ago. Let me get that for you. 79th in total defense. Where did we end up this year so far? Total defense, 19th in the country. That's pretty darn high when you come from 79th. Passing defense was 112th. Passing defense this year was 44th. It's a massive jump.
Huge.
Right? Huge. Rush defense was 23rd this year. Last year, rush defense, it wasn't that high. Rush defense was, let's see, I had it popped up just now. It wasn't as high as we would have liked. I think it was 40th. Let me put that up real quick. 44th in rush. So you move up 23, 44. So the numbers are better. Truth be told, we've got all of that established. But there's one thing also, John. Who has Zac Alley recruited so far?
Yeah, and that's a point that I made on social media. Like, he's a good coach. I don't want to take anything away from him.
Not at all.
But he took over a defense that was pretty much ready to go. The only addition that they made after he came was Dominic Williams. And you know that was a Todd Bates, Brent Venables recruitment. And so, listen, he's a good coach. I'm not gonna sit here and downplay him and dog him and say he wasn't a good coach. But he did all this with Brent Venables guys. Yeah. And he did all this with Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis and Jay Valai and Brandon Halls.
Ted Roof.
Those guys.
Brian Odom.
And so, listen, he's able to coordinate a defense, but can he recruit? Is he going to be able to go to West Virginia and recruit the kind of guys that he needs to be able to recruit in order to have success in the Big 12? Listen, the Big 12 isn't soft by any means. Nope. They showed this year they're a tough conference, and it's going to be a conference that's difficult to win. And West Virginia isn't going to be automatically like jumping up in tier rankings going forward. They've got a lot that they've got to improve upon and improve fast. Otherwise, Rich Rodriguez's tenure won't last very long there because of the way that he left the first time. So we talk job security and all that. What's the patience going to be like out there in Morgantown if Rich Rodriguez isn't able to turn West Virginia around after the way that he left for Michigan years back?
Yeah, and they've obviously given him more money. You know, he has a larger pool for staff and everything. So, not to be over here hyping up West Virginia, but they've shown that they've got the investment. After the Neil Brown experiment, it did not work out very well. And so, yeah, they're investing heavily into Rich Rod, hence why, they were to get a coach like Zac Alley to follow, in which Zac has followed Rich Rod a while, Louisiana Monroe, Jacksonville State. So it makes sense. I mean, he started off underneath Brent Venables, but he has really been cutting his teeth as a defensive coordinator in other places, mainly because Rich Rod gave him the opportunity. So it makes sense. It sucks, but at the same time, it'll be all right. Because like you said, the defense is Brent Venables. No matter how successful Zac Alley is, it's no different than, and honestly, Alex Golish getting the job at South Florida was kind of a shocker because he was underneath Josh Heupel, who is running the offense there at Tennessee. Joey Halsey, he's going to have to eventually at some point leave from underneath Heupel and go, if he wants to be a head coach, he's going to have to be an offensive coordinator somewhere so people can see that. Are you the one calling the offense, or is it still Josh Heupel type deal? Those type of scenarios do happen often in the conversations, in the circles. And Brent Venables, you can tell that this defense is his. You could tell his hand's going to always be in it. And truth be told, I was listening to Gabe and Teddy talk about it, and they're like, yeah, I would like him too. He's considered one of the best minds out there. Why would you not want one of the best minds to have a part of the defense? So we'll see what it looks like. But to me, I think we'll be fine. If there's any position I think we'll be fine at, is finding another DC.
Yeah. At worst, Brent Venables runs your defense, and you've got one of the best defensive coordinators in the last 25 years running your defense. Now, does that help you from a game management perspective? Who knows? We'll talk about defensive coordinator coming up next. Let's not bury that second segment just yet. We'll discuss it coming up here on Locked On Sooners. Today's episode of Locked On Sooners is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you weren't paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even know I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, like a VPN that I subscribed to years ago when we were living overseas. I've saved a ton because of that. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set money aside for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. So Jay, where do you think the Oklahoma Sooners are going to go with their defensive coordinator search?
Me personally, what makes the most sense, I put a tweet out there about this, and I said, you lose Zac Alley, who's your linebacker coach, promote James Skalski, move him up, the Clemson linebacker that came in as an analyst. He's been there for a couple of years. I say promote him, and I try to talk either Brandon Hall or Todd Bates into being your defensive coordinator. Guys that know Brent Venables' system. Brandon Hall has actually been a DC. He's like 7 years of experience of actually running a defense. And some of his defenses at Troy were really, really good. They were actually some of the nation's best. So him knowing the system, his safety room is really good. We love all their recruits. Like he has fantastic recruits there. I would give it to him. I know Jay Valai does have interest in being a defensive coordinator. I believe that's part of his arc as far as his career path. I don't know if they would pass that to him, if he would continue to run Brent Venables' defense or not, or if he would rather, because there's been rumors floating around X about him potentially looking around. So maybe he wants to go somewhere where he can kind of, build his own defensive philosophy and go from there, or he may implement the same one Brent Venables has. I don't know. He's been here for a few years. This has been the longest tenure job he's had in a bit. So I don't know how that would work out, but maybe, if anything, John, I'm wondering if you just try to go internal before you start looking outside. Now, there's outside candidates, but I would look internal first.
Yeah, if you're wanting to keep a similar defense to what you've been running, you probably have to look internal or look at a certain Clemson defensive coordinator. If you're wanting to keep the same defense, if you're willing to adjust and just run whatever, which I don't know if Brent Venables is willing to do that or not. A lot of guys are pretty strict about what they want out of their offense and their defense. Brent Venables, out of his defense, is probably going to want something similar to what he's been running for 25 years. It's had a lot of success. So I imagine that an internal look is going to be where they go, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do look at the Clemson defensive coordinator, Wes Goodwin. I know that there's a lot out there that, okay, maybe he's an intriguing candidate for some. I'm not 100% sold on the idea simply because of what has happened the last 2 games. Against Texas and against SMU, he allowed 34.5 points per game in those 2 games, the last 2 games of Clemson's season. Now, Clemson won the ACC championship, but it wasn't a shootout, and then basically got rolled by Texas in the college football playoff. So is that a dude that you're like ready to hand the keys to? That doesn't sell me. There are going to be a lot of intriguing options. And as much as Oklahoma is looking like a sinking ship, I don't think it is, but it looks like that to a lot of people. It's still Oklahoma. It's still an opportunity to work under Brent Venables on the defensive side of the ball, one of the more highly regarded defensive minds in college football for the last 2 decades and a half. So it's still an enticing place to work.
Yeah, and if you come in here and you're successful, you continue the success that Brent Venables is doing. If you keep that defense looking good, I mean, we moved from 11th in efficiency to 7th in efficiency, and in all the metrics, we are a top 15 defense in the country. If you continue that going in the SEC, all it's going to do is help you look at other jobs. And like, granted, we talked about last segment with Zac Alley situation. It's probably he wanted to truly run all of it. Hopefully, if you're someone that Brent Venables really trusts that can do it, he'll let you run it while, having a little dabble here and there when it comes to things. But that's something you should expect from one of the greats out there. You want to learn from that. You want to grow from that. You can leverage that. It's an opportunity to get yourself another job. So to me, if you go outside, the Godwin one, PU. I'm not a big fan. Because if you go look at the boards at Clemson, they're trying to fire that man anyway. So I don't think you want to help them get rid of him with a buyout pay. You want to go ahead and if they fire him, sure, bring him on as an analyst and let him kind of hang out and just see how that goes from there. But to me, I would probably look at, there's a few other names out there. Like I saw one, Brian Brown, the co-defensive coordinator over at Ole Miss. He would be an intriguing one. He's a younger guy, up and coming, and held Oklahoma to 20 points when they did good against Georgia. Him and Pete Golding, They did some really good stuff against Georgia, so can't complain. Now, I mean, Kentucky's a different story, but that was under 30 points. That's all that matters to me. If you can hold a team under 30 points, I think you're doing a solid job. So that's always a possibility of getting him, snatching him away from Lane Kiffin, kind of like we did with Jeff Lebby. There's a few other options when it comes to that. There's the defensive coordinator over at Arkansas. I've been seeing that as a name floating around. And they did a really good job against like Tennessee, holding them to like 20 points. So, John, it really depends. Like, do you feel like we need to keep the Brent Venables defense going? Because I personally do, just because we've seen success.
Well, whether or not I feel like they should or not, I think they will, just because
fair.
It'd be like if Lincoln Riley was going to hire an offensive coordinator, it'd be somebody that runs his offense. Yeah. Like if he was going to hire a play caller, it'd be somebody who runs something like what he wants to run. It's just it's like Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian. They're not going to hand the keys over to their side of the ball unless they're handing them over to one of their disciples or a guy that runs their offense, because that's what they know. And that's what they know has been successful. So why would Brent Venables want to depart from something that's been successful just because maybe they could hire a big name, or a guy that's been successful somewhere else? Now, if we're looking years down the road and we've got Oklahoma up and we're rolling and things like that, and he wants to try something different, by all means. But given what happened this year, given the hot seat nature of 2025, he's going to want to do something that's comfortable. And he's not going to want to depart from something that's comfortable. He's going to want to be all in and expect his defense to take another step. And I expect it's going to take another step. I think it's going to be really good again. Even though you lose Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman and Ethan Downs, I think it's still going to be really good because of all the guys you've got on your defense that are really good players. So I don't think they need to depart from a Brent Venables defense. I don't think he will, because it's been successful. You can't not look at the Alabama game, the Ole Miss game, the Missouri game. I mean, those were games that the defense was winning for you.
They were.
But you just didn't have an offense that could sustain drives or sustain their momentum from the first half to the second half, or you just give it away like you did against Missouri. I mean, we look at the Alabama game and say they scored 24 points, but really the defense sets you up with a defensive touchdown, and then Eli Bowen getting the ball down inside the red zone that gave you 14 of those 24 points. So as much as we want to poo-poo on the 2024 season, the defense held up its end of the bargain.
It did.
So I'm still ready to ride the defense into 2025.
Same. I'm ready to ride this exact same one we have, this whole setup. I don't want it to change because, like you said, they've done their job, and that's all that matters. Now we need a competent offense, and I don't care what nobody say. Ben Arbuckle coming in leads us. We should have a competent one now.
Right. And Ben Arbuckle right there is part of the rationale for looking outside, because you went and you found a big time, a guy that was a hot offensive coordinator coming out of the last few years. And that offense that he runs has been really successful across the country at a lot of different spots. And it's getting guys opportunities to be head coaches, to be offensive coordinators at big time programs. And now it's doing that for Ben Arbuckle. So if you want to take an outside look and bring in something that Brent Venables likes somewhere else, similar to what he did last year, right? They went outside the program, brought in Zac Alley, who had success at Jacksonville State, kept the defensive continuity going, and were able to continue to develop. So if Brent Venables wants to go outside the program again to find a guy, I trust that they'll be able to find a guy that's going to be successful. If they want to go with a guy like Brandon Hall or Todd Bates or a Jay Valai, I think it makes a lot of sense too. The defense, at the very least, has proven that if you want to stay in-house, you can afford to do that because it's been so successful. And again, if it just comes back to Brent Venables is going to run the defense, hey man, if my job were on the line, I'd want to have as much control as possible to save my job.
Even with everything else going on in his life, probably should go ahead and try to find a way to keep as much control as possible.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot rides on 2025. I mean, it's a prove-it year for everybody in the program. And one guy won't be a part of that. We'll discuss him coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. The Oklahoma Sooners lost a linebacker to the transfer portal. One Lewis Carter, 4-star prospect coming out of high school from Tampa Catholic. Dude, I love that dude's game. I think he's going to be a big-time player, and I was really bummed to see him go. He had something like 34 Power 4 offers, and he was the number 11 linebacker in the class.
Yeah, he's really good. Like, he has the potential is there, and it's very high. The big thing with Lewis Carter too is like you could tell he's a gym rat. Like, he lifts like heavy weights. I think Jaron Kanik said it like last year. He joked that he asked for weights for like his second birthday or something like that, just as a joke about how much Lewis Carter can lift. He's like, yeah, that dude's probably he was eating weights at 4 and 5 years old. And so when you got to see him go out there and hit some folks, you're like, ooh, stars. It's like exciting. So you're like, yeah. And Brent Venables raved about him. Like, Brent Venables even said that he felt like he was the best player out of the state of Florida when he got him in the 23 class. And I'm like, okay, let's see what he can do that. And he hasn't played a lot. I mean, he played 30 snaps in the bowl game, and it was okay. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the worst. So I don't feel like you got the full Lewis Carter experience, but it sounds like last year he was toying with going into the portal and getting closer to home. And so it sounds like that may be what it is. I could totally see him ending up at like a UCF or something. I mean, or if he really liked Zac Alley, he may follow him to West Virginia.
I mean, he had offers from all over the place. All the
everybody wanted
schools. Like, he could be at Miami, he could be at Florida, he could be at Florida State. Like, he's going to have his choice of landing spots. I mean, he played a bunch in the Tennessee game, and he was great in the Tennessee game. Had 5 5 tackles, 5 stops, according to Pro Football Focus. I thought he was really, really good, and is just one of those players that has an upward trajectory because of his elite athleticism and just his physicality and speed.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a bummer to the depth that Oklahoma had at linebacker. You still sit pretty well with Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis projected to start for you next year. Samuel Omasigo, probably your starting cheetah, and then Jaren Kanak. I mean, he's going to be going into his 4th year with the Sooners and 4th year under Brent Venables. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to float around and play both of those inside linebacker spots. So you feel good at least about that group. Now you got to bring along James Nesta. You got to develop him because you're going to need that 5th linebacker, or you got to find somebody out of the transfer portal to fill Lewis Carter's spot. It's going to be fascinating to see what they do there. You're going to have another wave of transfer portal entries and transfer portal pursuits, not just now, but in the spring. So it'll be fascinating to see where Oklahoma goes with that, because I think they need that depth. They've shown that they want to play 5-6 guys at those 3 linebacker spots, including Cheetah. What'd you make of the tight end addition that they made over the weekend and Will Huggins?
Yeah, Will Huggins was an interesting one. Former player at Kansas, transferred out there, went to Pittsburgh State. So, kind of went a little bit smaller because things didn't work out. He scored a touchdown on us in 2020, which I thought was interesting. When I saw the score, I mean, we were really blowing him out. It was like 62-3 or something like that. But he ended up scoring a touchdown against Oklahoma. So, he's got a little skin in the game against us. And I think it's funny because that's a former P4 player that went down a level in order to really get some more game. And the question is, how much are people freaking out about him coming in? It's like, okay, he was recruited P4. Yeah, I do know that.
Keontae
right?
Lewis. It's like the Keontae Lewis recruitment.
Yeah. He was a P4 player, just didn't work out, went and got some reps, got some production, and now he's back up. So, but I like him. I like the potential we have with him. I'm truly questioning how much Ben Arbuckle's going to use tight ends this season. Now, I know that we'll probably use them enough to get runs off, maybe some in the pass game, but man, I'm ready to see what Von Mitchell's going to put together. Hopefully he's getting his life together, and he put out a tweet, which I appreciate, him calling himself out and saying, I need to work on some things, and that's the reason why I haven't been playing. It hasn't been Coach Joe John Finley or Brent Venables or even, anybody else on the offensive staff keeping me from playing. It's myself. I'm like, I like that. But now I need to see you go out there and actually play. So I'm curious about how much we actually use them. What did you think about that pickup? 'Cause, I mean, I don't think it was a bad pickup, but it's earth-shattering.
It's a solid depth piece.
Yeah.
You hope he doesn't play. You hope that Caden Helms and Devon Mitchell and Cade McIntyre are your top 3 tight ends, and that neither him or Carson Kent play for you at all. Like, that's kind of where I come from. But it gives you some, a veteran with some security, and gives you a guy that can play on special teams. You have a veteran presence. Will he play much? We'll see. Will he be able to replicate what he did at Pittsburgh State in the SEC? We'll see. He's got good size and he's got experience. That's really all I can say about him. Will he be good for Oklahoma? Who the heck knows? Nobody really knows. Well, how much will he even play? I don't even know. That's the thing. That's where some of these, like the Cole Gonzalez edition, like people are crapping on me on social media because I just shared statistics of the dude's 2024 season and 2023 season in Western Carolina. And people are like, he's never going to play. Season. Okay, he's never going to play. But these are still relevant. Okay. Yeah. How much Will Huggins plays? Your guess is as good as mine. Hopefully he never plays, because Devon Mitchell and Caden Helms are your top 2 tight ends. And I think you're right. I think Ben Arbuckle is going to use a lot more 4 and 5 wide receiver sets that minimize the tight ends usage, because they want to spread some things out a little bit more. And I don't think it's a bad plan. I think you spread things out even when you want to run the ball. If you're running 4 wide and you're taking guys out of the box and you've got Xavier Robinson coming downhill, I like those odds. I like Xavier Robinson's ability to make some guys miss between the tackles or run somebody over between the tackles and have one less defender that he has to worry about inside the box.
Yeah, no, I agree. And having some that can block is going to be important. That's the one thing I need to look at the grades and see if Huggins is solid at blocking, because we need blockers. That's going to be important. We need tight ends that can handle a block. Hopefully Ben doesn't think about sending any tight ends to block edges, especially when we play against South Carolina. But, All I gotta say is I'm hoping that the blocking is better.
Yeah, I mean that had to be the first question asked by Brent Venables. Tell me your philosophy on how to block edges. Because if you say tight ends, the interview's over. We're done. Yeah, but it's going to be fascinating. I mean, again, Oklahoma's not going to be done in the transfer portal. Brent Venables said after the loss to Navy that they plan to add more guys on the offensive side of the ball. They felt pretty solidified on defense. We'll see what changes or turnover happens on defense now that Zac Alley's left. Are there going to be guys that follow him? Are there going to be guys that decide to jump because, hey, maybe we didn't get as much opportunity as we thought we were going to get? We'll see, but you're going to start seeing more and more transfer portal additions in the coming weeks. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports. You can follow me at John9Williams. Check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.